Hi, good evening. Welcome to Wednesday night yet again with us here at the Open Mic Magic Show. As we've said this week, it's a little bit different. We haven't got a magic show, but we have four fantastic magicians to talk to tonight and to learn a little bit about their history. I mean, over the last year that we've been running this event, the Open Mic Magic Shows, we have met so many fantastic magicians from all around the world, and some of them hopefully will be here a bit later on tonight. I mean, people like who I'm talking to, Tommy and Charles and Des and Cherry and Micah Kova, who then was on Fool Us, and all sorts of other people who are very well known in the world of magic as well. So we've been honored to have so many really great guests. So let's get on with it. Let's get on with the chat. Our first person I will be talking to tonight, this is Charles Schneider, and as I said in the little teaser on the advertising, he spent his life exploring fantastic, weird, macabre, all sorts of stuff. He is the weirdest man and the nicest person. Hi, Charles. Come alongside me and. And we'll find out a little bit more about you. The first thing that you're going to talk to us about is a little video clip. But before we go into that, what I'd like you to do is to introduce the characters. I mean, there's David Fincher, William Randolph Hearst, Mervyn Peake, and Orson Welles. If you could just let people know who they are. So, I mean, those will be big names, but maybe there'll be a few people out there who don't know what they're about. So, Charles, over to you, and then we'll run the video.
Right, very good. Hello, everybody. It's wonderful to be here. And let me be sure to give a prediction. Next year is going to be not that bad. I think we're going to have a good year. We cannot help but have things to be more promising. So let us believe that. Now then, beyond there, what we are about to run is a clip which I originally produced for my friend David Fincher, who I worked for many years, a great movie director. I'd sort of hoped to get into his movie Mank, and hadn't been in Hollywood in some time. So I actually produced this short clip in a black and white style. I don't even think it got to him. And it doesn't really matter to me, because in the end, I'm so glad I get to share this with you tonight. I think this is really the real reason I produced this, because in the course of things, I've discovered some cool things about Orson Welles and magic, which you won't see or hear about anywhere else. For starters, my relationship with David Fincher, who has gone on to direct movies like Seven, Fight Club, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, Panic Room, etc. And now he's big on Netflix. Over 20 years ago, I was in Hollywood and got my start as a writer there, working on music videos. I was at a company and they said, you should try writing these concepts for David, who was starting out his career there. So I became a writer of music videos during the early days of MTV and this sort of thing for Fincher. We've been in touch over the years. The last time I really heard from him was from his casting agent, who said, David's making a movie about the Zodiac killer. He would like you to be the third victim and blow your head off. So, and I needed some work at the time. That was probably the 18th time I've died on film. I'm not joking. I'm the zealot of death. Seriously, though, I went to San Francisco and they did all sorts of advanced planning, and I am in that movie. And it's at least I get residuals for it. So that was the relationship with David, and
William Randolph Hearst is you mentioned in the clip. So if there are people who may not know where where that
Absolutely.
ties in with everything
Right.
else.
The great Orson Welles movie, Citizen Kane, which has this reputation of being the greatest movie ever. Well, it's a very, very good movie. Was based on the life of William Randolph Hearst. Really, it was an extremely adept, scathing, skewering parody of the man who in many ways was Orson Welles' nemesis. He used his journalism, did Hearst, to prevent Welles from really getting ahead in certain ways. So San Simeon is the castle in which this multimillionaire, the great publishing magnate Hearst, lived. So when I allude to a cookbook, it's referencing that.
And Mervyn Peake?
Mervyn Peake was a great British author and illustrator, best known for a trilogy of books called the Gormenghast trilogy. It was fantastic. It's both Dickensian and Gothic, weird, full of atmosphere, unforgettable characters. It was made into a BBC film with Christopher Lee was in it, but I fear it did not quite do justice to the amazing books. And I had a wonderful experience meeting Mervyn Peake's widow, and I go into that a bit. And we'll be showing an incredible artifact that's the corollary of worlds between Mervyn Peake and Orson Welles. Very unexpected, and it's news here. I've never shared this with anybody before. So there's lots of cool stuff I'm excited to share today.
So what we're going to do is we're going to do the sort of wavy line thing, woo, woo, and go back in time to an earlier version of Charles and run the video. Okay?
Hello, David. It's Charles Schneider here. And I know you're completely busy in the middle of filming right now, but I wanted to send you this little package with some cool stuff. First of all, check this out. I discovered this cookbook called Castle Fare. Authentic recipes served in Hearst Castle. I already got into like preserving and making jams and jellies. So I found here's an updated version of this book, Castle Cookbook. I thought, wow, Rosebud, comfort food. There's a connection here. So I found William Randolph Hearst's recipe for brandied peaches and marmalade. And I made a batch of the stuff. And then I watched Citizen Kane while eating Hearst's marmalade, and nothing compares to the experience of combining the senses in this manner. I was online and I found on Heritage Auction the most incredible drawing of Welles by one of my all-time favorite writers, Mervyn Peake, who wrote a trilogy called Gormenghast, which currently Neil Gaiman has under production for Netflix. Apparently, Peake saw Welles in London in Othello. So he wrote Welles a letter in 1952 saying, "Would it interest you to see a play that I've written? It's a somewhat fantastic affair in verse." Mervyn Peake. I won these on Heritage Auction. Orson Welles wrote back, "I'm not in London now, but the best place to send your play is to my London address. I will look forward to reading it. Warmest regards." And here is the drawing which I won in auction. And these are two angles. Sorry for the schmutz. two angles of Wells clearly as Othello. This has never been reproduced ever anywhere, and I share it with you. Kind of one of my prized possessions for sure. About 40 years ago, I wrote fan letters to Mervyn Peake's widow in London, and she invited me to tea. And twice I went to London and spent some awesome time with her and received Christmas cards from her till the end of her life. The only other thing pertaining to Wells that is pretty super cool. So I live out here about an hour from Sacramento, and I have a friend who's an 84-year-old magician named Don Wilson. The subject of Orson Welles somehow came up, and he said, "Oh, I sold Orson Welles some magic a bunch of years ago, and before he could put the letters pertaining to these sales online, I snagged them from him and be like, I need these." So here's the first item. This is a letter from Orson Welles requesting a magic trick. And I think this is from about 1972. "Dear Mr. Wilson, will you send me your $6,000 bill repeat? Thanks, Orson Welles. In care of M. Roth Screen Images, in care of his agent at the time." But notice the formatting of the letter. It's short, terse, and to the point. Now look at a letter from 25 years ago. He must have spent his life writing these little memos, these short little notes, getting lots of stuff done. So, apparently 2 weeks later, O. Kodar, who we know was Wells's mistress, wrote to my friend, "Dear sirs, please send me Seeing is Believing." I enclose $3. These are the two magic tricks which Welles requested and which my friend sent him for $3 each. By the way, I've become an extremely adept sleight of hand magician in the last decade or two. So I can perform these effects very well. And I'll let you know that Seeing is Believing is just a friggin' incredible magic trick. So this is the actual magic trick, which Orson Welles ordered from my friend, the very ancient magician, Don Wilson. And I'm not going to show you the gimmick. Are you out of your fucking mind? The idea basically was that you would take a dollar bill, and you fold it like this, and it's pretty difficult because they put these fibers now, these fibers in the bill, but too late now. Now I've got, 4 pieces. So that must be 12. I don't know if I can. Well, okay, that's it. All these little pieces are falling apart here. I need a paper clip or something somewhere. Oh, what? Here it is. Here it is. Here it is. Oh. See, I needed to use this little paper clip to put all those pieces together after shredding them. Of course, if I was a great magician, I could restore, I could return to the original semblance of a reality that the Oscandalusha Dalis Nashandas Restore Mathematum. Oh. So that is seeing is believing, the magic trick that Wells purchased for $3 about 35 years or so ago, and hope you enjoyed it.
I think you were enjoying it. You enjoyed watching yourself.
I did, but then I was mortified to see that a certain vulgar moment was not bleeped out.
No, I decided to leave that in because it was just you, Charles being Charles. So I think people will excuse you one expletive during the show.
I was utterly shocked and mortified. I don't believe in dragging scatology or vulgar terminology onto the magic stage. It's utterly distracting and misdirection. Yeah. However, it was awesome you kept that. It just
your life has gone in multiple directions, hasn't it? I mean, what you've done with your life. I mean, comedy, writing, painting, magician. But the one I want to mention is script writing. What people might not know about you, Charles, is that you've written, I believe you said to me, about 10 Tom and Jerry episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And while you're talking about your Tom and Jerry life, I'm just going to stick something up in the where is it? Up there. There we go. Can never get my left from my right when I'm mirror imaged. This was written by Charles Schneider. This is a Tom and Jerry. What I'm going to do is I will put a link to this in the chat later. But it's a wonderful Tom and Jerry episode, all where Tom becomes a magician and Jerry becomes a mini version of him up in the up in the flies area, you know. So tell us about that, Charles, how that came about.
I lived in Hollywood for about 30 years or so. I may end up there again one day. We'll see. Enjoying my country gentleman life presently. But I was in Hollywood doing all kinds of things. I'd worked with David Fincher. I did quite a bit of acting in low budget movies. I was an extra in Beetlejuice for about 1 second hanging, and all kinds of, it was just fun. Wrote a music video, met Stevie Wonder and all this kind of neat stuff. A friend of mine said, you know, with your sensibility, you'd really be perfect. I'm working at Warner Brothers on this new Tom and Jerry show called Tom and Jerry Tales. So you can actually buy, I believe, the entire several seasons on DVD, on Amazon or something. I don't want to plug anybody, but Tom and Jerry Tales. This came about in about the year 2000, more or less. So we're talking almost, the early 2000s. So I went there to Warner Brothers, and I'd already written some episodes of a cartoon about a little dog named Puccini, which was more in the Ren and Stimpy tradition. In fact, Billy West, who's the voice of Ren and Stimpy, worked on Puccini and did some voice work. So I had experience writing cartoons and other things, but I immediately took to the job working on Tom and Jerry. You had to be very disciplined. You had to listen to all the notes, but I knew right away, oh, there's so many good ideas. A number of them, of course, had already been done. The mouse will go inside a disembodied skull and run around, and the skull will start clattering. And but at the same time, I'd really fallen truly in love with the cups and balls magic effect. I listened to all the great wizards of yore who said, if you want to master this, your magic bar mitzvah, learn it, because all of magic and skills are within transportations, levitations, decapitation. Well, you know what I mean. It's all in the cups. I'd actually had gotten to a point where I was performing the cups and the balls in the park in Los Angeles near the La Brea tar pits. I even brought my aging border collie dog with me because I missed her all day. This was only on Sundays. And it wasn't fair to keep the dog cooped up at home. Well, it was wonderful because I worked a way for her to reveal the final load for me. So I would throw the ball in this and that. And there I was falling in love with the cups and balls magic trick, and he hit me. Tom and Jerry. I'm in this incredible moment of opportunity. I could combine my great, great passion for magic with my love of cartoons and animation and everything. And I'd been going to the Magic Castle, and I'd been aware of how many magicians either were ripping each other off or were competing. And I thought, oh, well, they can't always be chasing one another, but how about I have the cat and the mouse be competing magicians? Jerry will be way up in the rafters, and he'll be doing everything in miniature. So he'll be replicating the effects that the cat is performing down below. And I know there's an innate fascination with miniatures and tiny things. So I took advantage of that. I asked the people who did the storyboards, actually, I gave them a bunch of my magic books to borrow, which is something I also did when they animated the Freaky Tiki, Tiki, another cartoon I wrote in which Tom and Jerry go to Hawaii and they encounter the fire goddess Pele. So I wanted to be sure that they were accurate with their depictions of the magic effects. And as we will see in a little clip we might be running later, someone we all may know really appreciated that fact. I was absolutely thrilled the way the final thing turned out. It took about 4 months between the time I wrote it. I didn't think about it. The next thing I knew, it was on television. It was the thrill of my life, really. I woke up, I wanted to experience it and milk it for all it was worth. So I woke up early in the morning and I went to a diner, a local restaurant, just to have some eggs. And I knew they had a television there. And there were just all the regulars at this restaurant. And I said, excuse me, is there any way you could put the television on? I wrote the Tom and Jerry cartoon that's about to come on. So the entire restaurant of people said, no, what? It made me a true celebrity. I feel like I could be in a very dangerous situation anywhere around the world. I could say, wait, please don't mutilate me. I wrote Tom and Jerry. So it was a good thing, you know.
And it's not only cartoons that you're involved in writing. You also are an author of a rather unusual book, which we have. Where are we? That's the one.
Oh, very, very good. I'm so excited to tell you all about this. This was published by Fantagraphics Press. And in a nutshell, this is a reproduction, a beautiful reprint of a catalog of practical joke devices, of very sophisticated devices from about 1930. These are chairs that would explode, goats that you could ride, chairs that tip backwards, something that looks like you're blowing in it to test your lung power, but it explodes and shoots talcum powder back in your face. I mean, really bizarre things. Imagine Rube Goldberg, or imagine if a millionaire could create crazy chairs that would have, again, caps, bullets fit into them, blanks. Really weird. These things were produced so that alleged secret societies, generally in America, but elsewhere, could initiate their members in what seemed like Masonic, dark and diabolical rituals. Now, the Freemasons, of which I am a member, oh, that's me and Eugene having some fun. And never do or did any of this sort of crazy stunts. It's very serious. But there are other fraternal organizations, such as the Elks and the Odd Fellows, that were somewhat less about a message and more about camaraderie and hanging out with the boys, getting away from the little lady. So they needed to create a way to attract members. So many people imagine that secret societies of the Illuminati, it's like Eyes Wide Shut. It's these old men dressing in robes, and who knows what they do behind closed doors. So the DeMoulin Company capitalized on that superstition about what they thought or what you would think. And they created these crazy machines, which were wildly popular. There was a time in which people thought that wild animals such as goats were involved in secret societies. Who knows what you had to do with a goat? So the company created artificial goats on wheels that they would blindfold somebody, put him on a fake goat, buck him off it, and then they knock you onto an electrified rug or carpet, which had a low circuit running through it. So now you're being electrocuted on this rug, and you're screaming, you can't take it anymore. You wet your trousers, and then everybody says, "Bravo! You're in, brother. You're in. You're a member of the club." Oh, that was rich. You know what?
Sorry, Charles. Sorry, the delay. I talked over you there. The thing that the lung testing thing, I believe that they are still made by some of these peculiar magic, and I think Stuart would probably know more about that. He's just nodded his head. Yeah, so those are still available. So I've seen them for sale on these sort of weird and wonderful magical sites. Some of them.
I've got one.
Yeah.
Fantastic. They're large boxes with a little tube on it. It's like, test your breath. The catalog, oh, good, fantastic. The Museum of Wonders. The catalog also came with instructions.
Yeah. Charles, finally, what I'd like to do is play in the final clip, which is one you are immensely emotional about.
May I give this a little setup very quickly?
Give a little preview as to what this is about.
Right. In writing my book, I was told, you better talk to Bill Smith. He's David Copperfield's main illusion builder. He can get you to David. Why would I want to talk to Copper? Because he's the #1 collector in the world of this company's stuff. What? It's too impossible. No, he is the ultimate collector. He spent much of his life, in addition to his magic museum, he has almost everything that was in that catalog. I went to Las Vegas. I talked to Bill Smith. He said, here's a telephone, cell phone. It's Copperfield. My jaw dropped. I spoke to the man for several of those wonderful hours of my life. And he said, he came around after we spoke for several days. He said, I think I'd like to write an appreciation for your book. So miraculously, David Copperfield was involved in my book. So if you order a copy of it, he writes a wonderful and hilarious anecdote in it. During this enchanted, amazing honeymoon phase of my life, I sent Copperfield a copy of the Tom and Jerry cartoon that I've just discussed. This is about 12 years ago, more or less. And both my mother and father had just passed away within the last handful of months. And I received this phone call, a message.
Charles, David Copperfield, I received the stuff last time. Appreciate the stuff this time. It's awesome. I printed it out carefully in my files, and I enjoyed your abracadopy thing. Really cool. Really beautifully done, actually, all those things. And you have to send it to Chuck Jones, the inventor of Mismade the Girl there, because he'd really appreciate that. Call me when you can. Thank you.
End of message. To repeat this message, press 1.
So, that makes me very happy, this particular message. I achieved the summit of what I thought I could, to some extent, to write a Tom and Jerry cartoon about magic, and then I get a message on my answering machine from David Copperfield telling me how much he loves my Tom and Jerry cartoon about magic. And it's about April 4th, more or less. It's a Saturday. And it's been several months since my mother passed away. I've been trying to keep myself very busy, but the reality it sinks in slowly. During times like this, where I wish I could share my happiness with them both.
Thank you. Thank you, Charles. That was wonderful. It's been so nice having you on the show tonight. And we are going to have a Q&A at the end. So if anybody has questions for Charles, save them up or type them into the chat. And we will bring Charles back if there's anything that... Oh, Charles, did you have something you wanted to show us quickly before?
What makes you think that?
Well, you just sort of suddenly produced some cards up out of nowhere.
Kilroy was here.
Yeah.
You know what? I thought I'd do a very quickie. An oldie but a goodie. And when I see Dolly, I see Charles. Maybe I should do this as Dolly. Would you like to see the magic? It's my Dolly. All right. Actually, I'm going to do this like a New York magician. New York City in days of old. Okay, let me switch my persona. Yeah, we'll do that and we'll get that there a little bit. Yeah. Hey, folks, it's so good to see you out there in Magic Land. Charlie Schneider here with something that's going to mesmerize you and make your eyeballs pop out, I hope. Look at that. 3 cards, just 3 cards. We got a Joker. Oh, he's a funny guy. We have a 10 of clubs. And we have the Tree of Hearts. My favorite card is that Tree of Hearts. Can everybody say this with me? I don't have to hear you, but I can hear you. That Tree of Hearts. Just say it. Oh, I love that Tree of Hearts. So 1, 2, 3. I'll put my finger on this corner. Whoop, Joker. I'll put my finger on this corner. 3 of hearts. 10. 10. I'll take her, take her, take her out of the center. I took that 3 of hearts out of the center, you know. Get on with it, lad. Get on with it. If I have removed 1 card and have these, what does this leave me, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, everybody of every stripe? Exactly, Lee. It leaves me the 3 of hearts. It leaves me the 3 of hearts. The 3 of hearts. It leaves me the 3 of hearts. The 3 of hearts.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you very much. I mean, you can unmute yourselves and you can show your appreciation to Charles for the last half an hour or so. Wonderful stuff. Thank you, Charles.
Really
Thank you very much.
Bravo.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Fabulous.
Thank you.
Fabulous.
Keep going, Charles.
Throw money.
Salvador.
Thank you, Charles.
My pleasure.
Right. That was fantastic. And I say, if you've got any questions for Charles, we'll have a Q&A at the end of the show. We're going to move on. We're staying in the United States of America to a gentleman I met about a year ago online, and we've become internet buddies and magic buddies and really good friends. And I love the man. He's just a sheer delight to be with virtually, and hopefully once this stupidity that's hitting the world and this horrendous thing that's going around everything is over, I'll be able to visit New York City and meet my buddy Tommy Burnet. So would you like to come up next to me here, Tommy? Hey, wonderful. Hello, Tommy. Something that we've never mentioned at all in all the months we've been doing open mic lectures, that's sort of the elephant in the room, that you were born with cerebral palsy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And could you give us, sort of in your own words how the struggle you had as a youngster and how you got through that and became what you are now?
Yeah, it was difficult growing up. I'm in my 60s, and I even as progressive as New York City was at the time, we still weren't that progressive, and I was ridiculed and beat up occasionally, and but around the time I was about 9 years old or so, I received my first magic set, and it gave me a feeling that I could, if I could do that, I could do pretty much anything. And people who used to beat me, I actually made friends with all my bullies, and I flipped it around, and it was even one time when I went camping with a group of kids from school, and one of my boys was there, and he got scared because we were all telling ghost stories, and I was able to comfort him. So things kind of flipped around for me, and the more I got into magic, the more I realized that that was the way I could get what I wanted.
You've got
And
yeah. So and you've got quite a remarkable record. I don't know if any other magician has ever done this, but you've been just about to every corner of the USA. So you tell everyone your little record that you have achieved as a magician.
well, I have performed in 48 out of 50 states in America. And I often ask people to guess what two states I never performed in, but I will tell you it is Hawaii and Alaska, because they are not part of the continental U.S. And at the time, I decided to travel on my own. I was about 29 years old, and I packed up a bag of magic tricks and a couple of changes of clothes and just started walking and made it all the way out to California and went up the coast and turned back around and hopped in every state for about a year and a half. And
Wow.
I would not recommend it to anyone. But I did have a lot of fun, but I will still not recommend it. And I performed at whatever venue would have me. And there were some cases where I was turned away because of how I spoke, and I did have a bit of a limp. But I don't know if it was any more than anyone else would have been rejected, but it felt like it. It felt like it. And you know, I do have a lot of emotional scars to this day around it, but I try to put one foot in front of the other and keep going, just like everyone else. Especially nowadays, we all have our own stuff that we're going through, and it's about what can I do for you to make your life better. So yeah.
I can imagine that the trip round the states like that each phase must have sort of built your confidence in your persona and your style, and so at the beginning you were sort of this raw magician, and then at the end you were Tommy Burnet.
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. I think by the time about a year and a half rolled around, I had what my friend calls put in the miles, and not only figuratively but literally. I put in thousands and thousands of miles on my feet, basically, or whenever I could get a ride. But it was something that I thought I had to do for myself. And there were many times when I felt like giving up. And I think it's an important message for anyone. Even up and coming, don't give up on your dreams. Just keep putting one foot in front of the other, and marvelous things will happen. It might not happen the way you expected or wanted to, but I've had many wonderful experiences that would never have happened to me if it wasn't because of magic. So,
yeah, Yeah. How old were you when you got back to New York after that epic journey?
I had just turned I had just turned 30, so that would have been in 1981. It would have been. Wait, no,
And,
1991. That's right.
and you were a magician, and of doing all genres of magic, not just your chosen path now, which is
Yeah,
magic.
I went from doing close-up to doing escapes. I did escapes for about 5 years. Um, um, I had like 5 years of types of straight jackets and um, 20, 20 some odd different styles of handcuffs. I couldn't find the photo. I have a photo of me with like 12 different handcuffs going from here all the way up to here. Kind of like the famous one of Harry and G, but I didn't have to change. I did a lot of silks and ropes. The only thing I never did was dove magic because you know.
I can't imagine you doing that, Becky, to be honest, Tom.
Yeah, I had at one point I had a few rabbits, and I did make a transfer where you put a black rabbit, like almost all black on one side, almost all white on the other, and when you close them together, you open it up and it's half black and half white. And I was going to put that on the market, but I never did. But it was a good effect. And I did that for about 12 years or something.
You branched out into an alternative way of using your mentalism stuff with working as a deception specialist. Can you
Yes,
tell us about that and what that's all about?
sure. That was about 10 years ago. I was approached by a woman. I happened to be in a magic shop, and one that I ended up working at a few years later. But she approached me and said, I'm an attorney. I work for such and such law firm, and we're looking for someone who can determine if someone is lying. And I was like, yeah, I can do that. Why not? And I'll be honest, I had no idea how I was going to accomplish it. But I did. I did that for about 2 years until I ended up getting a more steady job somewhere else. But that was a very interesting job. I had a couple of interesting cases where there were mostly divorced men who were trying to hide their assets from their ex-wives. And my job was to determine whether they were lying and where they were hiding their assets. And there was only one case where I couldn't track, and out of about maybe 70 or 80 cases. But it was a lot of fun. I don't know if I would do it again, because it was also, it was a lot of hard work.
So the moral of the story is, if someone asks you if you can do something, just say yes.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, if this is the career path you want to be on, yes is one of the most magical words. Yeah.
I mean, you've had quite a career. You've been on TV a lot in the USA. I mean, I've got a list here of NBC, ABC, CBS,
Yeah.
and also local cable. people in New York would probably know about someone called Evan Ginsberg and Talents Unlimited. And these are all things that you've sort of put together in your career.
Yeah. And some of them kind of fell into my lap. I've been featured on ABC, NBC, and CBS News quite a few times. I did the first appearance I did was an expose on Streetcar Marcy, because here in the city, especially back in the 80s and 90s, a lot of con artists would do Streetcar money on the street and rip people off. So I was contacted by ABC News, and I did like a 5-minute expose on why you shouldn't play Streetcar money with somebody on the street.
Yeah, because you'll lose all your money. The other thing that you've done on locally in New York is there was a show called New York's Got Talent, and you were, just looking at my notes here, you're a finalist in that. How did that go? What was your experience with that? So
yeah, I know I put finalist. I actually won season 3. I did 3 seasons of that and was a finalist in all 3 seasons. But the third season, they finally gave it to me. I think mostly because they wanted me to stop coming. So
there's the old magician's joke, isn't it? I'm going to keep doing this till you like it.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's like the one of my favorite jokes is there's a magic convention and there's 3 magicians going up, and the first one does his time, and then the second one goes up, but he keeps going on and on and on, and one by one people get up and leave until there's only one guy left in the audience. And the guy on the stage says, "Everybody else left, how come you're still here?" And the guy in the audience says, "Oh, I was supposed to go on after you."
You're also quite involved in a charity called Fountain House, which is. Can you tell people about that and why you got involved? And
yes, absolutely. Fountain House is one of, if not the largest facility that helps people with mental health issues that is not a medical or psychiatric institution. They help people get jobs, they help people get education, and they help people find places to live that are affordable, safe, and convenient. They help people basically do whatever they need. They actually help me, and I usually don't say it, but why not? It's an interview. Among having cerebral palsy, I also have bipolar disorder, and at one point in my life, was pretty sick, and Fountain House helped me and helped me get my life back together and helped me get my career back on track. And I've been very grateful for them. So I perform for them for free about 4 times a year. I haven't been able to so much because of the pandemic, but I recently did an online show, a virtual show for them during the holidays, and it was great. It's a great organization, and anyone who wants to donate money, they can definitely use it.
Yeah. You're also not just a magician. I mean, a bit like Charles. You enjoy painting,
I do. Yeah.
and you're an author, and you've also got a few. You've got some magic books and think more on the mentalism side, isn't it?
Yeah.
Uh, which have been well received in the magic community. So.
Mhm.
What you've got a new one coming out as well, which is more for the magicians rather than for our lay audience who are watching us now as well.
Yeah.
But,
Well, I don't have too many products. I have about 10 products that I've come out with, not including my books. And one of them was a book test. And I've had an idea for another one for about a year and a half, and I just haven't really done anything with it until this holiday season. I got motivated to start working on my new book test, which will be called the Hollywood Monster Mashup book test. And this one will have 5 books. Dracula, The Invisible Man, Frankenstein, a book called The Jewels of the Seven Seas, I think, which was the original mummy story by Bram Stoker, and The Strange Caves of Jekyll and Hyde. So hopefully that will be ready and ready for sale by end of January, beginning of February of 2022.
I know you have a very good friend who's a mentor of yours called Kenton Nepper, and I did ask him what to pop in and see us, but unfortunately he's travelling, so he couldn't. But he sent his best wishes and etc. So, best wishes from Kenton. Before we show the video, which we will run in a second, tell us about the organisation that the Kong Show. This thing that you do every now and again, and we're going to show a clip from that. Tommy actually being Tommy with a real audience and on stage, rather than his little in the little square virtual box that we've been used to seeing over the last year.
I always say I'm much better in person, and I think I am. I give my best on here, but as we all know, it's never the same. Being live is the best. But the Kong Show, most of us know a woman named Ella, who comes to my show in America. And I think maybe she's come here a couple of times. I don't remember. But Ella and her husband, Powell, have a local comedy show called The Kong Show on TV. And it isn't always on TV. It's usually live, but that's the name of it. And they travel from different venues out here in New York City and perform Powell writes comedy sketches and have a little comedy troupe of actors locally who perform his sketches. And recently, they've been including myself, Omar Illusion, Xanadu, who might you guys know. Anyway, so the clip that you're going to see is from one of those live shows about, I would say, 2019. And I'm performing a book test that we all know and love. but this is my favorite outcome of that book. So I hope you like it.
Yeah, before we move on to that, I forgot, and you have to forgive me, Tommy, because although you visit us every Wednesday on the Open Mic Show, you and Omar Illusion have a show that you present from New York that I pop into every now and again as well on the Tuesday, which is at sensible time in the US and quite late for us. I think it's 11 p.m. over here in the UK, but still not too late. So Tommy, does a fantastic thing. It's called the Virtual Interactive Magic Theatre. Have I got that right? Yep. So watch out for that as well, because that's always worth popping in and watching. And also, you stream it. You do a replay on Facebook.
Replay on Facebook,
YouTube.
And YouTube. I also like to put in a plug for my podcast.
Yeah, your podcast, of course. Yes. Yeah.
I almost forgot. And yeah, we're going into season 3, starting in January. So I'm pretty happy about that. And the first episode of season 3, my guest will be the one and only Kevin Peele. Now, I know you're all thinking, you're all thinking, why him?
Why?
And I'll be honest, because I couldn't find anybody else. No, that's not why. That's not why. Kevin is a great musician, and every time I've seen him on the open mic, I've seen him improve on effects that he keeps working on them until he gets them the way he wants them. And that is something that you don't see much anymore, especially on this kind of format. And I really appreciate all the hard work you put in. You've also gotten a few accolades. And I just want to say, by the way, I like flipping the script around when I'm with you. But I just want to say, Kevin, I'm very proud of all the work you do, and I hope you keep it up.
Thank you. And of course, just down there now is the gentleman that looks after everything else, that he sits in the background and just clicks buttons. But he's essential. So without Stuart, we wouldn't be doing this.
I feel the exact same way about him as I do you.
Yeah. Anyway, let's move on to, before we get on to our final 2 magicians after Tommy, we have your video. This is Tommy on the Kong Show. I'll just move you out of the way, Tommy, and then we'll run the VT.
I love that. I should remember that. Donna, I'm going to pass the book to you. Okay. You open to any page you want. I want you to remember any word that you want, but I'm going to give you a caveat that you make it a challenging word, like 8 or 9 or more letters long. Okay. Otherwise, it's no fun for me. Okay? So go ahead and take the book. Honestly, turn to any page that you like. It really doesn't matter to me. No, not that one. No, I was just kidding. I mean, you've got, you have a word in mind? Yeah. Okay, close the book. Some people say I can peek all the way from over here. And if I take my glasses off, by the way, I am now legally blind for your entertainment pleasure. But I will leave them to write down, okay? So, Donna, you have a word in mind?
Yes.
Do me a favor and imagine the word hanging in the air. Oh, very good, you've done this before. It's almost like playing hangman, except there's no hangman. There's no, oh wait, there's an E. There's an E somewhere in your word, yes? There's no E. I'm hearing In my head, it sounds like E. Oh, wait, it's an I. Oh, this is interesting. I get to tell you my favorite story. I went to art school for 14 years. Does that make sense to you? It does, doesn't it? Scary, isn't it? I went to art school. It's not as scary as what I'm going to say, though. I went to the High School of Art and Design. I went to the School of Visual Arts. I went to Parsons School of Design. And I finished up at the Arts Business League for 2 years. And in 14 years, I learned one very important fact. I can't draw. Making fun of again with terrible That's not cool. So you have a lot in mind. I think I know what it is. I'm running out of room here. I did ask for a long word. And there were other long words in there, so there's no way I could have known that you were going to pick that one word, yes? For the first time, out loud, so everyone can hear, what word are you thinking of?
Illustration.
Shit. Sounds like what?
Illustration.
Oh, you mean like this?
Fabulous. And that is Tommy Burnet, as he should be seen live on stage doing his thing. Fabulous. Thank you. Thank you very much, Tommy. Thanks for being with us tonight. And I noticed there were a few questions popping up, and we'll get you a chance to answer those after our final two magicians of the night. Let me just make sure that they are unmuted, which they are. Talking about these two, there is just so much to tell. And I was doing my little bit of, as they say on Facebook these days, research. And I found this on TripAdvisor. I'm not sure which show, it must be a more recent thing probably, and Des or Sherry will probably tell us about it. But we visited the summer show on its opening night last week, and we certainly were not disappointed. This is a traditional variety show with dancers, vocalists, comedy and specialty acts, and the show was well produced and gave a flowing quality to the evening. For comedy with a twist, you can't get better than the antics of Des and Cherry King. Comedy magic at its best. And they're with us tonight to chat about their lives and how they got to where they are now. Hi, Des and Cherry.
Hello.
Hello. Lovely to see you. Right, I've got about 27 pages here, so I hope. Shall we? Which order shall we do this? Do you want? Should we talk about Cherry's early life first, or your early life first? Then? Which of you two wants to?
It matters not. Maybe you do Cherry first, and then she can make my cocoa while I'm being.
Right. What I'm going to do, Cherry, is put up some slides up here, that side.
Okay.
Why can I not point which? Because it's over there. Yeah, that's where the green thing is. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, this is not about me. It's about you guys. So I'm going to stick the clips up, and you can tell us a little bit about your career. I mean, I believe that you went to a dance school in Morecambe. You started as a dancer.
Yes, I was a dancer for 23 years.
Right.
I started with my local school in Morecambe, that's true. But then I went to college in Liverpool and has spent 3 years doing sort of dance and drama training there. And during my final year at the college, I got into my first professional show, there's a famous comedian who comes from Liverpool. Sadly, he's no longer with us, but his name is Ken Dodd. And he was putting a show on at one of the theatres in Liverpool. And he came to the college and asked if we would like to audition for his Christmas show. So several of the girls did. And I was one of the lucky ones. The photo that's there now is the one from that show. And it was a great thing because I spent 3 months in this show while I was doing my college studies in the day. And it gave me my equity card, which was a wonderful thing to have to start your career with. So that was my first show. I then went on to do summer seasons and pantomimes and cabaret work and this kind of thing. But I guess the highlight of my dancing career was when I auditioned for a new show. It was going to be a world premiere at the London Palladium, and it was called Singing in the Rain. And it was the first time that the show had been put on stage. Up until then, it had only been a film. And again, another famous variety act, Tommy Steele, was fronting the bill. He was the main character. And one of my ambitions was to do a musical comedy show and also to work at the Palladium, the London Palladium, which is famous around the world, I know. And it's just one of those sort of things in life that you aim for to put on your CV. Anyway, it was wonderful. I was in the show for about 18 months, and then a couple of years later we toured it and then went back into the Palladium. So it was a huge part of my career.
Yeah, so that was, sorry, Sherry, that was 1983, was that?
That's correct, 1983 through to 1984.
Right.
And then that's the picture there. That's one of the pictures from that particular show there. That's the red and white costume. But then I learned about people going on cruise ships, and you could combine your love of working and performing with traveling around the world, and that seemed like a really good idea. So I auditioned again for Cunard. That's the photograph there for Cunard, and spent many happy years, a mixture of different contracts on different ships. I was on some of the smaller ships, and then on the QE2 for a little while, and then back home. And it was then when I was choreographing for some shows, I was getting more into that side of things as well. And then I met someone who took me away from all those theatre shows and suddenly brought me into the world of magic. And
so that was I believe in Folkestone where you first met Des.
Yeah, it was one of my first shows. The first show I did from college. As soon as I left college, I joined this show in Folkestone in 1975, and that's when I first met Des. But we didn't get together that year. It was just fun. Everybody was friends. We all had a good time and parted. And then 12 years later, we finished up in another show, another variety, another summer
That's
show.
the photograph. That's
the
Folkestone. That young fella in the middle is me, and one of the girls in the yellow costumes is Cherry.
It was Des for Cherry.
So that was it. But when we met again, that's when we actually got together, and a few more years after that in shows before we went into the magic. But yeah, that's so.
Yeah,
that was brilliant. I loved it. I loved my 23 years performing.
Yeah, so you met for the.
Yes,
so you met again 12 years later. My notes say Eastbourne. Have I got it right?
Eastbourne at the Hippodrome in Eastbourne. Yes, in the black and white minstrels.
Oh, you can't say that.
Which is politically incorrect.
It is, but there we are.
It was very
at the time, it was okay.
Yeah. I know. It's the funniest thing how everything changes, and you can't go back. But the times were of the era, weren't they? And there was a huge show on toured and was on television, etc.
It was so popular, packed houses. I mean, it was such a popular show.
Yeah.
Then, and it was a lovely show. I mean, okay, it wasn't great looking at it from our perspective now. That a lot of the men in the show used to black their faces. But as far as the entertainment, the lovely numbers, the lovely musical numbers and everything, it was spectacular.
And then when you met Des, that's when magic took over from just dancing.
Well, a little bit. We were still in shows, still doing our sort of variety and panto shows. But then we got offered the chance to go on a ship. Well, Des got offered the chance to go on a ship and said, was it possible to take me along? And so the agent who asked us said, well, yes, if Cherry can be in the act as well, that would be really good. So we decided we'd put an act together, and that's how it all started.
So if we freeze,
but we didn't want to be a magic act where it was a magician and an assistant.
Yeah.
We wanted it to be a double act because Cherry was hugely talented, and you don't want to waste that, do you?
No.
And you'll probably play a little bit of that video later, and you'll see how super she was. In fact, it was thanks to her I got away with it, I think. But so Cherry said to me, I've worked on the ships a lot, and I'm sure you'll love it. Yeah. So we asked if she could go, and that was all agreed. And this must have been about October time when they offered us the job. And the contract was due to start in March. And in the end of November, we went into rehearsals for a pantomime at the Theatre Royal Newcastle, which is a lovely big theatre, the home of Opera and Ballet North. And it's got all these wonderful mirrored rehearsal rooms, which obviously weren't being used while we were there. So I said, could we use some of those rooms to rehearse in? And they said, yes, of course you can. We didn't have any props. We had, as a team, we had directed and choreographed a show for 2 years. For the company was called it was Nick Thomas then it became Kudos, and that we choreographed and directed and devised a show called Spellbound, which we were also in. I didn't do any magic in it. We used to book a young, good-looking magician to be the magician, and so I said to Nick, "Can I borrow some of those illusions?" And he said, when he stopped laughing, said, well, yeah. So they were sent to Newcastle, and we'd get to the theatre early in the morning and rehearse up until the matinee. And then we'd rehearse after the matinee, between the matinee and the evening performance. And we did that every day except Sundays, which was our day off. And we were fiddling around with the music on little cassettes, recording it, and Cherry would try and count the bars, and at the end, when we knew what music we wanted, we could then go to the studio and have it recorded. But we couldn't do it before because we could have got it wrong, and you know, once it's down, it's down. So the pantomime ran until the end of February. We had a week off after the pantomime before we joined our first ship in Singapore, and that was the very first time we'd ever done a magic act together, and that, we didn't realize it was the beginning of another 20 years for both of us of super work.
So if we freeze time there for a second and then move back to the 60s and your path into magic, was, I believe you left school at 14?
I left school at 14 because I was I now I was dyslexic, but they didn't call you dyslexic then, they called you stupid. So I went, you had to go and see the youth employment officer, you know, a few weeks before you were going to leave, and I went in the office and he said, right, so he got my school report. He said, I guess you're going to be what would you be? It was a farming community, so I guess you'll be a farm labourer, yeah? And I said, no, I don't want to do that. And he said, well, you could work on a building site or something. And I said, well, no. He said, well, it's going to have to be manual work because judging by this, you're not going to be able to work in an office or anything, are you, or a bank? So I said, well, I don't want to do any of the things he suggested. And then he said, well, if you could do anything in the world that you like, what would you do? And I was already a keen amateur magician, doing shows for free for local clubs and things. And I said, I'd like to go into show business. And and he threw me out. He said, well, if you're not going to take this seriously, boy, I can't do anything for you. So that was me at 14. Bearing in mind, I then left school. I did work on my dad's farm, but I didn't get paid because it was a very small farm, but he I got my board and keep free, and I made my money by doing little shows for which they'd pay me £1 10 shillings. I know it sounds like peanuts, but remembering a farm labourer in those days would get £9 10 shillings. So if I did a couple of shows a week and I got my board and keep, that was fine at that age. I was only, you know, in my young teens. Then I started working with a concert party, and eventually my fee rocketed up to 5 guineas. That's £5 5 shillings. And we were working one night, and somebody said, would I like to go into the business professionally? This guy was in the audience, and he was something to do with show business. And I said yes. And so he signed me up to manage me. And when I was 20, that was 1965. So that's only, what, 6 years after the youth employment officer had thrown me out, saying, don't be ridiculous, you'll never go into show business. 6 years later, I'm in show business professionally.
Yeah.
And my first job was up in Manchester, a big new club then called the Talk of the North. And I was very nervous. And the top of the bill was Shirley Bassey.
Now, that isn't Shirley Bassey, but you have a story to tell about that picture, don't you?
Well, when I got to Manchester, I was going to open on the Sunday, and they said, we've booked you a gig on the Saturday so you can get a feel of the audience. I think, in truth, they wanted to see what I was like, and if I was rubbish, they wouldn't have put me in the Talk of the North. So they put me in a casino just outside Manchester, a place called Bolton, and at the top of the bill was Bunny Lewis. There's Bunny Lewis. Now, it's an ambiguous name. I didn't know, you know, it's Bunny. That could be a man or a woman, couldn't it? But Bunny was a big name in the clubs. And I got there early. I'm setting my props up in the big shared dressing room in the corner. And this lady came in, and she was wearing like a tweed suit, and not a stage costume, but like a tweed jacket and skirt and a blouse, and she's carrying a little vanity bag and a suitcase, suit cover that she hung up. And then she started to take her jacket off and unbutton her blouse, and I thought, oh, she's going to change. So I said, do you want me to go out while you change, love? And she said, yeah, it's all right, we're all fellas in here, aren't we? And it was just, to me, straight off the farm, so naive. You know, this was a drag act. I'd never come across anything like that before. Anyway, that was my baptism of fire. And then I really wanted to get in the theatre, so I worked in the clubs regularly because there was a lot of work. You know, I mean, it was literally 1 week after the other. You never got a week off. And then I did an audition for a summer show. It was about 2 years later I got my first summer show, which had been 67, in Rill, with a trumpeter called Eddie Kelvert, who was quite a big name at the time. And then I was in with that company, so I was doing summer seasons and pantomimes every year. And then I was playing Buttons in pantomime, or Simple Simon. I was playing the comic. When I got older, I had to play the dame. I think you've got a picture of me as a dame somewhere. That's me. Look, I look like my mother, but it's that's my dame. It's very English and very traditional. The comic always plays a woman, not drag like Bunny Lewis. It has to be a man dressed as a woman. It's not feminine at all. And originally the principal boy was always played by a woman, but now they don't do that anymore. They use girls for principal boys. So I was doing pantomimes and summer seasons, and in between I was touring. I was in with a show called the Pink Windmill Show with a man called Rod Hull, an emu. So I was doing lots of work. We got together, and the work then summer seasons started to get fewer, and pantomimes were getting shorter, and some of the little variety theatres were disappearing like butter in the sun. So when we got offered the job to cruise, we said we would, and off we went. And that was the start of a whole other career, 20 years on the ships, seeing the world and having a marvelous time, doing 10 months of the year at sea. We were sailors.
Des, tell us when you want to play the show reel in. Do you want to play it in now, or?
Well, that would be any time. Play because then folks will know what we used to do, because we weren't a clever magic act. It was always based on nonsense, you know.
Okay, so we'll run the video.
This was filmed on a ship several years ago now. You'll see by what we look like. But Go on.
She's been complaining lately that I never take her out anywhere. So the other day, I took her out for cookies and juice. That surprised her. She'd never been a blood donor before. Okay, Chris, here we go. On the rock it up. All this without the aid of a net. Up. Yes! Good that, isn't it, eh? I shall now remove the plank, remove the supports, leaving Cherry floating in the air. Give us a try. Get up, I don't think they noticed. It doesn't get any better, I'm warning you. Now, I've got 3 pieces of rope. I've got a long piece of rope, which is exactly the same length as my leg. I've got a medium piece of rope, which is exactly the same length as my arm. I've got this piece which is much shorter than the other 2. Now, I'll give you some idea how ugly I was. If I'd have stayed at Neverland with Michael Jackson, I'd have got my own room. And I was an unwanted child. My parents didn't want me. In fact, my mother even inquired about having the pregnancy terminated. The doctor said, well, he said, it's a bit late now, he starts school tomorrow. They were always trying to get rid of me, my mum and dad, always. But, you know, I got left on so many doorsteps. I thought I was going to grow up to be a Jehovah's Witness. I'm unlucky in business. I bought shares in a chicken farm and the cock was gay. Cherry and I, and Grandma, she was a beautiful woman, Grandma was. She was half English and half Russian. And she only shaved under one arm. When Granddad passed away, Grandma was so upset, and she said to the undertaker, she said, you know, I'd like to have had him laid to rest in a lovely black suit. But she said, he's only got a blue suit, so you'll have to use that. And the undertaker said, well, I could get you a black suit. She said, no, you can't. She said, we can't afford another suit. It'll have to be the blue one. Well, 2 days later, Grandma goes to the undertaker's office, and there was Grandad looking all immaculate in a beautiful black suit. So she said, and how much is that going to cost? The undertaker said, don't you worry about that, dear. He said, that black suit won't cost you a penny. Wasn't that nice? He said, what happened was, he said, the day after your husband came in, we had another gentleman brought in here, and he was wearing a black suit, and his family wanted him buried in a blue suit. So he said, I just swapped the heads. Found out, I've just discovered what happens when somebody dies on the insignia. No, they don't bury them at sea. They bring them in here and sit them on this side.
There we are.
Very
Hard to
good.
believe we were that young, isn't it? Hard to believe.
Absolutely.
You see, we'd worked really. We'd kept busy in this country. We'd always worked, but and people in the business do. But as far as the public were concerned, in England, nobody knew who we were. And then we started to go work on ships in front of an international audience, and suddenly people from all over the world didn't know who we were.
I can relate.
But you know, we were living the dream. We were working, we were seeing the world, and it was great. And then when I got to be 70, we retired, because by then, I mean, this sounds awfully blasé, but we'd been everywhere. We'd been to 115 different countries, and so we were going back to the same places. And we got a lovely home here, and but we never lived in it. So we retired. We came home, and we did 4 or 5 pantomimes.
4 pantos and 2 summers.
4 pantos and a couple of summers. And we used to, up until the beginning of COVID, we used to go out and do musical shows with a thing called the Paper Moon Theatre Company, which were lovely because they were all matinees. They were all busloads of OAPs, wonderful audiences. But then COVID came and we stopped, and we decided that first year we didn't do anything, and we liked it so much we've decided that's it now. We're never going to work again.
Your last, was it your last panto that you worked with these wonderful people?
Oh, that wasn't the last one, but when we got home, again, Nick Thomas, kudos, I said, would I go to Hull and play Dame with the Chuckle Brothers, because I'd worked a lot with the Chucks and I knew all their material, and so we could just drop into all their sketches, and if they went off piste and did something, you know, I knew where they were going, so we could work together really, really well. And I think that was one of the last pantomimes poor old Barry did. Barry was actually, I was going to say, the same age as me. He was a few months older because his birthday was on Christmas Eve and mine is in April. So, but then he was already in that pantomime not able to do the flying on the Kirby for the acrobats and things because his leg was hurting him so much. But he hadn't even told Paul. He'd been diagnosed that he'd got cancer in his body all over the place, but he hadn't even told Paul. And then, of course, we lost him. Anyway, that was it. Then we did 3 more pantomimes after that, which were very, very nice, but they were kind of shoestring productions. But it was just a bit of fun, and we just did it because, you know, like a well-trained circus horse, that's what you do at Christmas. But we've realised now, you know, we don't need to work. We don't want to work anymore. We've done it, and also it's not as satisfying because if I work now, I'm not going to be as good as I was when I was working every single day and when I was younger and could rush around and have that energy. So you're never going to be as satisfied because you're never going to be able to recreate that. You get past your sell-by date. But we had a good run.
A fantastic run. Yeah. And your new career as an inventor, I believe now.
I know. I know what you're talking about, and I think a lot of these people have seen it. I showed you last time, didn't I?
Yeah.
I was reminded when reading the Magic Circular of an old sort of musical gag, and having nothing to do, I went in the workshop and made one. Do you want to see it?
Yes, go on. We want to see this.
It's here we are. So I made it up. It's for, I thought, for all those people who get dogs for Christmas, you know, little dogs, and if you're out with them and they're running around, and then there's a crowd of people, you want to pick them up. So that's where his little head goes through there, and that's the handle of the carry. So you put his head through there, and to keep him in, then you just tighten that up, and you can carry him. You see, isn't that great? Everybody that's got a dog is going to want one of those.
I never get enough of that, but it's just so funny.
I'll say 2.
That was wonderful, Des and Jerry. Thank you ever so much for coming in and entertaining us all tonight. And that
Thank
show
you.
reel is just something else because
It's
I've
nice
noticed.
for us to
I
reminisce and
noticed
see ourselves when
Bruce.
we were young.
Yeah, I noticed. I think it was Bruce saying earlier, where can he see more of you? So, do you have any other other material? You know, sort of.
I don't think
your
there's
shows?
anything else on the internet now. That was our show reel, but you can see by the state of us, you know, how young we are, that was a while ago, and also by some of the jokes that would be very inappropriate now. You know, I cringed when I did the Michael Jackson joke, but you know, that was of a time. He was in the news then, and things were different and they change, and so you know. In retrospect, you probably wouldn't have done some of those things, but there we are.
There was a question about which ship we worked on. We worked on Silversea for many contracts, and also for Radisson Regent cruises as well. But there was one comment, I think, in the comment box there. So yeah, we've worked Silversea.
Right. Well, I just want to say a very, very big thank you to our interviewees tonight, Charles, and if I can find Tommy, where is he? Where's Tommy hiding? Can you find him, Stuart? There we go. And so from all of us to all of you, have a really happy New Year.
Yeah.
It's got to be better than the last one.
Hasn't it just?
And let's all get our lives back on track and how we want them, and let's get all this stuff, you know, out of the way and in the past. Stay well, stay safe, look after yourselves, and good night. Thank you very much.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so Q&A time. If anybody's got any, and Stuart, have you got a sort of a collation of any questions for anybody there?
Yeah. Well, actually, I wanted to start off with one for Des and Jerry, because I've been fortunate enough to see your acts several times, and I know we've talked about it before, but the cardboard box routine. It's so well rehearsed and so fast and so impressive. How long did it take you to actually get it so perfect?
Well, we decided because when we were on the ships, the ships we worked on, they had lots of repeat guests. So when we were on, we'd be thinking about what we wanted to do in the next contract. And then we'd be on the ship for about 4 months, and then or 5 months. The longest we did was 8, wasn't it? We'd come home with our ideas, and we'd have a month at home, 6 weeks, to get new music recorded, costumes made if we needed any, and get the props done. And we wanted to do the cardboard box, so we've got a big double garage here. So we went in there with a cardboard box, and Cherry got in, and I'm pushing the sticks through really slowly. I didn't want to do that pattern where they go through the corners, because that always looks a bit Steward's Inquiry to me. I wanted to go straight through, because that looked more mystifying. So we worked out a pattern, and I said, this looks really good. So, but Cherry couldn't see the pattern on the outside, so we took the sticks out. Cherry got out, and we put the sticks through the same holes, and we looked in the box, and neither of us could work out where she could possibly be. It looked fantastic looking in the top.
It was more impressive looking in the top than it was on the side.
Yeah. In fact, when we were on the ship, sometimes we would push it off, and there was a Filipino stagehand, and I'd get him to push the sticks through. And then at the end of the show, we'd just leave the box out on the front of the stage, and people would come up and look in it and think, how could that? Because it was more impressive than the trick. Anyway, we rehearsed it for that 2 months, and that was it, really. But I mean, we used to spend a lot of time rehearsing. When we'd got
and finding the music as well. It was important to have the right music for the right prop.
We've had 3 different bits of music for that, and according to the persona we were performing it in. But we also, opposite our house was like a village hall, and you could hire it. So we used to hire this village hall when we were home for best part of a week, and we'd, just as if we were rehearsing for a show when we were working in this country, we'd go over there at 10 o'clock every morning and work until 5 o'clock at night and do a full day rehearsal just like you would in a show. Because if we tried to rehearse at home, you know, the phone rings, you make a cup of tea, there's distractions. But if you went over there, you could do a full day. So it was quite intensive, but we did it in the month that we were home and took it back. And Cherry can still do it. I mean, I know she's not nearly as old as me, but she can still do it. It's quite a squash in there, quite a contortion, but she can still do it easily.
It's just getting in and getting out that's a little bit harder these days.
And initially, the idea for the box was, I thought, well, there's two of us in the act. One of us is very graceful and good looking, and the other's a bit plump and waddles about. So which one is the best to put in a box and which one's the best to put on view? So the idea was that I was going to go in the box and Cherry was going to put the sticks through. And we could have done it. It would have been a slightly bigger box. But when we tried it, I could do it. But after I'd been in there for the thick end of a minute, I couldn't get out because my knees had seized up in that position. So that was it. So we had to put Cherry in the box.
I just need to remind our magicians that we are still in the world of having some non-magicians in the audience. So
there's no secrets in the box.
no, absolutely. I just
no,
had
it's
a
a
private
genuine
message.
box and there are genuine sticks and Cherry.
Yeah.
It's like you said, Des, it's the first time I'd ever seen it where it wasn't going off at the weird angles, which always made it look suspect. And I remember the first time I saw it, I had to come and talk to you about it because it was just like, how can you possibly do that? So impressive.
We wanted to be able to turn it round, and if you put them in at angles, you can't,
looks awful
because you can't see that. So if you and the reason, another thing we did on one of the ships, a previous production company had a mirror on the behind the site. The back wall of the theatre was a big mirror, which they used to open so that when the girls were dancing, it looked like twice as many girls, you know. But that production company had gone. The mirror was still up there. So when we did the cardboard box trick, I'd get the stage manager to open up the back cloth so the audience could see behind it as well. There was a big mirror behind us, and that made it look really impressive.
Yeah,
it's fabulous.
Whilst we've still got one of the other questions was any conventions? Have you done any magic conventions? Performed at any of those?
Not really, not big conventions, just little local ones. You know, I did.
Well, we did the Eastbourne one, didn't we?
Oh yes, sorry, yes. I that was the only one of note. I've done Portsmouth and another one. I can't remember what it was. But yes, we with Sussex Magic Circle, we did the International Brotherhood of Magicians convention at with Stuart on the bill. Stuart was on the bill, and he didn't die. I always get worried when I'm working with Stuart in case he dies, but I don't mean die with the audience. I mean literally drowned himself in the really dangerous trick he does. I saw him do it once, and I've never been so scared in my life.
Des, I think we should share this with the non-magicians while they're still with us. Can you give us the secret of that wonderful levitation that?
Yeah, we had a lot of trouble with that. That used to go wrong.
We're still working on it now.
I was very worried because sometimes when you've been using it a while, the shock will crack that plank, you know, and whereas, you know, there's always dancers on a ship. If I could have always got another girl, but the planks, they're really hard to get on a ship.
Okay, so shall we? Let's. Charles, one of the other questions that we had on there was, could you explain a bit more about what writing a music video actually means and involves?
Yes, that's a very good question, because many people, as people wrote those things, it's just a musician, people dancing about, but it actually involved writing a scenario. And I wrote most of them for that same fellow David Fincher, who would end up being a movie director. So he was sort of practicing for his art, you know, and experimenting with things. So it had to be very specific and detailed. And we had to also get the gigs in the first place. So I helped write these sort of pitches. LA Woman will begin in Billy Idol's apartment. We see him getting ready for his gig. Close up of, anyways, we make it sound all very impressive, and they put in the money bid. So I was able to hone my own craft because I had to learn descriptive writing. Just describing these various inane things that would happen during the video in extreme detail. So that was it.
Very good. Did you ever involve any of the magic or any of your art in any of those videos?
Did I use any magic or art in the old music videos? No, I can't think of anything like that. At the time that I was writing them, I was also doing underground theater and all kinds of weird Grand Guignol stuff at the time. But no, there was really no crossover into the music videos that I can think of exactly. But it was a fantastic. Yeah, I'm sorry. Continue.
I was just going to say, I remember in Ghostbusters, they always did warn never to cross the streams. So yes, you are right to have not.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question, please?
Mm-hmm.
Of course.
Yes.
Is it possible, Charles, to get burlesque paraphernalia still? Is that still out?
100%. You can order it via Amazon, and I think I've seen copies for $11 used. And you could certainly find it on Abe Books or bookfinder.com or Al Libris.
Yeah. Okay, I'll look for it tomorrow.
I think you'll be thrilled. It's a laugh out loud book. You're like, how the reason that David Copperfield was so obsessed with it is because many of the mechanisms are extremely sophisticated. You know, it really looks like I wonder if I could drag a chair over in a moment and show and tell, but you know, it really looks like a solid piece of furniture that collapses in this miraculous manner.
Yeah.
So I
love anything like that. I really do, and they're inspirational. You look at them and they spark another thought, don't they?
It is, and what's wonderful is in the back of the book there are entire scripts for each of the different machines. So there'll be one that might be called Crossing the Sands of Cairo, and that involves what really looked like a beautiful old Persian rug, but these fine copper coils running through it attached to a battery. So the fellow really would fall off of the goat blindfolded and then be almost electrocuted, and he'd bounce around on the rug. That company finally had to go out, cease production because of people actually had heart attacks, and there are too many lawsuits of people dying during these hazing rituals. Or there's one, they have you sleep in a little bed and then they would fly a paper mache skeleton over the ceiling on top of you. By the way, now that I have you both for a moment, I can't remember enjoying a show reel more than to see the two of you. I knew you had it both as a secret up your sleeve, but
thank you.
It blew me away. And mainly, even I was able to hear the sound, but the quality was excellent of that reel. You really were careful to pick the perfect moments, because I was laughing actually till there were tears in my eyes.
Oh, thank you, Charles. That was very
When-
flattering.
The comic timing was brilliant when you fell off the table. Ah!
And they double, I love that double take. The double take with the Professor's Nightmare.
Oh, yeah.
You get to allow to small up, and you're like,
That's pantomime training, Tommy. All that double take and mugging and all that stuff, you know.
yeah.
Well, to be honest, while putting this all together, I've watched that now 3 or 4 times on the trot, and I still laugh watching it yet again. It is genius.
I've got something to show Charles. He was talking about the what I think is known as the diver's lung tester, and Lee had put a thing in saying that Jordan O'Grady makes them. Well, this is the first one that he's made.
Hang on, let me just find you.
Yeah, I'm going to take my background off because it's a bit distracting.
Can you bring him into the matrix, Stu? There we go.
There it is.
Yep.
Like the Grumbleweed had, isn't it?
There we are. So Jordan makes amazing ones. I think this looks like a pepper pot that he's adapted. And yeah, I was actually pranked with one of these when I was working as a close-up magician. This guy said, do it. And I was absolutely foaming because I was covered in talc and I was wearing a black suit and I had to go on to another job. So as soon as Jordan O'Grady said he was going to make them, I said, I'll have one. And this is number 1. And he said, I said, how much is it? And he said, 50 quid. And I said, right, yeah, I'll have it. And when I paid for it, I said, by the way, Jordan, make it 3 or 4 times the price.
Well, I think
and he has. He has. If you go on, I'm not sure what the site's called, but he sells them and he makes the most intricate ones, and it's absolutely lovely. But I'll put a link into the chat of the fun I've had with it. I think if you click on that, it'll come up in a separate window. You can watch it when this all closes down. But yeah, there we go.
And I think someone was asking a short while ago the name of your book, Charles, so that they can find it.
It is Burlesque Paraphernalia. Burlesque Paraphernalia, published by Fantagraphics Books. They do a lot of comic books, that sort of thing. It's the name of the company which it is about is the Demoulin. Demoulin, the Demoulin brothers. There were 3 brothers. The one was the inventor, the other was a designer, and the other was good at advertising. So they made a ton of money in their time. Even if I hadn't edited that book, it would still be one of my favorite books. It's like it's like a novelty catalog for wealthy, insane people.
We got one more question for Tommy. Of the 48 states that you have performed in, what was your favourite, and have you any particular reason why?
Oh my gosh. Well, I have a few. If I had to pick one, it would be California. I performed in LA. I performed in Santa Monica, and I performed in Thousand Oaks. And I had a blast. I've been there twice since. Plus, I didn't walk there. I didn't walk there. I took a plane like a normal person. But I would say California will be my favorite. I did have fun in Florida. I performed in Coconut Grove and also in Miami Beach, and that was also a lot of fun. But I think LA and Thousand Oaks were my favorite. Yeah.
We've got one more on there. Charles, what year did you write for Tom and Jerry? Was it?
That was the early 2000s. So we'd have to look up Tom and Jerry Tales, that television show. There were a couple of seasons. I think it was about 2002, 2003, more or less. Yeah. And many can be seen on the internet, or again, you can buy these DVD collections of that particular show. It was good to be because they put a lot of money into them, so they looked pretty much somewhat like vintage, cell animation. So they were a little deluxe, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, seeing as we're not streaming now, I can show some of that, because obviously I couldn't show it in full with sound, etc., on full screen while we were streaming to Facebook, and I can cut this out when I produce the YouTube version. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go away for a minute or two, and I'll dig out the version if people want to watch it. That is, if you want to see the full the version. It's about 3 minutes long, isn't it? 3 or 4 minutes long.
Oh, just going through the catalog, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I'll while you're talking, you carry on. Talk among yourselves, and I will.
By the way, the Tom and Jerry Tales came out in 2006.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Whew.
2006 going into 2007.
Exactly. 2006, that was an intense year. Well, when is a year not intense?
Des and Jerry, another question here is, do you have any apprentices that you are going to carry on the show for you? Have you trained anybody, or are you happy to leave the great Desmondo behind?
No, we haven't, actually. I often wish there was somebody that I could sort of mentor and help overcome. I mean, there are some, we all make the same mistakes in the beginning, and if you can get someone to help you, I was lucky when I started because there was still a lot of the old variety acts around, and they were quite generous. They'd give you constructive criticism, and they'd try and help. But there's no one like that now, and often for the new acts, if they're working, if they're, you know, so they're often just doing gigs and they're the only act on, so there's no. I would love to, but I don't know how you would go about that. I don't mean for money, to make money out of it. I mean just to help somebody if I could.
Oh,
there were so many people around. I remember, and of course, when you're new, you're living the dream and you think you're great. And I remember I was in digs in some rough digs in Manchester with an act called the O'Keefe Brothers and Annette. And they'd been in the business forever. It was a trio. They did sort of a like an adagio thing, and they were quite elderly to me. I was 20, and they were probably in their 50s. And Paddy said to me one day, he said, "So how long have you been in the business, son?" And I was really proud of the fact that I'd been a pro for a year. So I said, "I've been professional now for a year, Paddy." And he said, "Christ, I've done a spot longer than that."
To be fair, though, I mean, you say you'd like to do it. I mean, but you've always been so generous with your time at the Sussex. So you always give advice, and you know, so you know, the both of you just always happy to share your knowledge and you know to give advice.
Jerry's great because when we started the double act and doing the magic, she was the one that knew all about the blocking and the choreography of where to stand and how to move and all that, and to block it with the illusions. I'd just been on my own doing my thing, so you know, anybody, she's great at that. And we had worked in shows I'd been directing and Cherry had been choreographing. So, but it's easier to do it for others than it is yourself. I'm always willing to help anybody, but sometimes people ask you, you know, say, have you got some constructive criticism? And you have to be so careful, because what they really want is praise and adulation, and you could give them one little thing, you know, that you feel would improve it, and I don't want to upset anybody, you know. I'll tell you who I do enjoy helping, Dave Croucher, because I think Dave has got a proper sort of variety style about him, and I've given him several things and bits and pieces which he uses and does really well. But yeah, I'd love to be able to pass some of it on, but I don't know, because we don't have any kids, and so it's difficult.
You definitely write that joke book.
Some of these, they're all as old as the hills now. Comedy has changed, you know, and so they wouldn't be relevant anymore. But then, you know, they're all adaptations. Every joke is just an adaptation of an old one. It's not, you know, you bring them up to date and put different names in of people and, you know, politicians and places and celebrities.
Did you guys ever do any close-up when you were on board ship?
Yes, a little bit, just for our own, just for us, really. It wasn't part of the contract, but the cruise director appreciated it if there was a night when they'd had a lecture just before dinner, and so that meant everybody was in the theatre for the lecture, and then the Metro D would get a huge hit where everybody would go to the dining room at once. So to avoid that, I used to say, well, I'll go and do some close-up in the bar, and that'll keep them in there a bit longer, so they went in dribbles, and that's. But I've never really been a close-up magician, and Cherry used to be involved in it as well. We had one trick called what was it called? Quadro. It was a puppet of a chicken, and the chicken would. Somebody would choose a card, and I'd throw them all on the floor face down and mix them all up, and then Cherry would come along with the chicken, and it would peck the cards, and it would pick up the chosen card.
We had a couple in our club who went off on a cruise ship to do close-up work specifically, and they were very despondent. They said that I don't know what the ship was or what the audience was, but they seemed to be deliberately trying to wreck the effects. So anything with invisible thread, they would deliberately try and break it or discover it or grab hold of stuff. Did you have any bad experiences like that?
No, because the time we went in to do the close-up, they'd already seen our show, so they knew who we were,
right.
And it was all done for comedy. You know, I didn't try and pretend that it was all clever stuff, and I certainly wouldn't have used any invisible thread in close-up. I mean, no, it was all done as very light-heartedly. We never had it. We found them really nice audiences, but the ships we worked on were all very high-end, very expensive ships. So the audiences were
invested in it.
Mostly, no, they were mostly older people.